They had done this dance before, twice, in 2022. It was a 2-hour marathon where Kanye called him a Karen and eventually squeezed out a half apology that satisfied no one in 2025. It lasted 4 minutes before Kanye ripped out his earpiece in Mallorca and told Piers to circle back when you can count. Now, against all odds, against all advice, against everything common sense would dictate, we're about to try again. Piers Morgan had called Kanye West a sniveling little coward on international television. Kanye had called Piers a plantation owner with a microphone. And somehow, inexplicably, they had agreed to sit across from each other one more time. What happens when the most controversial man in music faces the most controversial man in media? What happens when neither of them knows how to back down? The answer was about to unfold on Piers Morgan, Uncensored. And by the end of it, only one of them would still be in the building. Subscribe now and drop a comment below, because what you're about to witness is the collision everyone saw coming, but no one could look away from. The Piers Morgan Uncensored studio in London had been transformed for the occasion. Extra security, additional cameras, a palpable tension the production crew could feel the moment they walked in that morning. Everyone knew this interview could go sideways at any moment. The question wasn't if there would be fireworks, was how big the explosion would be. Piers Morgan sat in his chair, reviewing his notes with the intensity of a prosecutor preparing closing arguments. 61. He had built a career on confrontation, pushing buttons, on asking the questions others were too polite or too afraid to ask. He had been fired, cancelled, praised, and condemned more times than he could count. And he had never once backed down from a fight. Kanye West. At 48. He had achieved everything a musician could achieve: 24 Grammy Awards, billions in business ventures, and a cultural impact that would be studied for generations. And in recent years, a descent into controversy so complete that even his most devoted fans struggled to defend him. The antisemitic tweets, the DEFCON 3 inches comments, the Hitler praise, the KKK imagery, the White Lives Matter shirts, each scandal more shocking than the last, each apology less convincing than the one before. Kanye had become a case study in how genius and self-destruction could coexist in the same person. The Piers said as Kanye took his seat across from him. The single syllable carried years of history. Piers. Kanye replied, his voice flat. Thank you for coming back. After last time, I wasn't sure you would. Last time, you couldn't count. You said 32 million when I had 33 million followers. That's disrespectful. Piers smiled, but there was no warmth in it. And you ran away before I could ask a single substantive question. That's cowardly. The word hung in the air, cowardly. The same word Piers had used on social media after Kanye's Mallorca walkout. Spark that ignited a weeks-long firestorm. I didn't run away, Kanye said, his voice sharpening. I removed myself from a situation where I wasn't being respected. That's called boundaries. Boundaries. Piers laughed. You've made a career out of having no boundaries. You've said things about Jewish people that would make actual Nazis uncomfortable. You've praised Hitler on multiple platforms. You wore a KKK hood and called it artand. Now you want to talk about boundaries. The studio felt smaller, the walls closing in as two massive egos moved toward collision. You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about, Kanye said, leaning forward. You start every conversation with an attack. You don't want dialogue, you want content. You want clips? You want me to say something crazy so you can play it on a loop for the next week? I want you to explain yourself. Piers shot back. I want you to look into that camera and tell the millions watching why they should take you seriously after everything you've said and done. That's not an attack, that's journalism. Journalism. Kanye laughed bitterly. You're not a journalist, Piers, you're a provocateur. You're the British version of what you accuse me of being. You say outrageous things for attention, then act shocked when others do the same. The accusation landed. Piers' jaw tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. The difference? He finally replied, voice controlled but edged with steel, is that I've never praised Adolf Hitler. I've never threatened an entire religious group. I've never worn white supremacist symbols and called it fashion. You've said plenty of things that hurt people, Kanye countered. You just don't get called out for it because you're the one doing the calling out. You've attacked Meghan Markle for years. You've said things about women, minorities, anyone who doesn't fit your worldview. But because you have a platform, suddenly that's journalism and not hate. We're not here to talk about me. Why not? Kanye fired back. Why is it always a one-way interrogation with you? Why do I have to answer for every mistake I've ever made while you sit there acting morally superior? Piers leaned back, studying him, frustration mixed with something close to respect. Fine, he said. Let's talk about both of us. Let's have a real conversation. A pause, but that means you actually have to engage instead of running away when it gets uncomfortable. Asterisk, I didn't run away in Mallorca. You got my follower count wrong. You started the interview by disrespecting me. Got your follower count wrong by 1 million out of 33 million. That's a rounding error, not an insult. It shows you don't do your homework. It shows you don't respect me enough to get the basic facts right. And if you can't get the easy stuff right, why should I trust you with the hard stuff? Piers rubbed his forehead, frustration visibly building. All right. Let me ask you something, and I want a real answer. Not deflection, not whataboutism. A real answer. Kanye spread his hands. Ask, why Hitler? The words landed heavy. Of all the things you could have said, of all the historical figures you could have invoked, why did you repeatedly praise Adolf Hitler? A man responsible for the murder of 6 million Jewish people. A man who represents the absolute worst of human evil. Why him? The studio fell silent. The question hung in the air like a blade, waiting to fall. Kanye didn't speak at first. When he finally did, his voice was different, softer, more measured. I was in a dark place. I was off my medication. I was surrounded by people telling me what I wanted to hear instead of what I needed to hear. And I was angry. So angry at the world, at the industry, at everyone I felt had wronged me. That's not an answer. That's an excuse. Let me finish. Kanye's voice sharpened. I'm trying to explain, not justify. There's a difference. Then explain. When you feel like the world is against you, when you feel like there's a conspiracy keeping you down, your mind goes to dark places. You start looking for explanations. You start believing things you wouldn't believe if you were thinking clearly. A pause. And some of those beliefs, they were wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. Are you saying you were wrong to praise Hitler? I'm saying the version of me who said those things wasn't thinking clearly. That version was sick. That version was lashing out in the most destructive way possible because I wanted people to feel as hurt as I felt. Piers leaned forward. But that's still not taking responsibility. You're describing it like it happened to someone else, like you were possessed. But it was you. Your mouth, your words, your platform. I know. Kanye's voice cracked slightly. I know it was. Me, and I have to live with that. Every day I have to look at my children and know that someday they're going to Google their father and see that he said things that align him with monsters. You think I don't carry that? I think you carry it until the next controversy makes you forget, Piers replied. I think you apologize and then do something else that requires a new apology. It's a pattern. And at some point, the apologies stop meaning anything. Kanye stood up abruptly. Security shifted, tense, but he didn't leave. He started pacing, his energy too big for the chair, too big for the room. You want to talk about patterns? He said. Let's talk about patterns. Let's talk about how the media builds people up just to tear them down. Let's talk about how every black artist who gets too successful suddenly becomes a target. Let's talk about how the same industry that played my music at their weddings and their children's births now acts like I'm a monster. You're not a victim here. I'm not saying I'm a victim. I'm saying the situation is more complicated than you want it to be. I'm saying I can be wrong and still be treated unfairly at the same time. Those things can both be true. Piers shook his head. The Jewish community you attacked, they're the victims. Holocaust survivors who had to hear you praise the man who tried to exterminate them, they're the victims. You're a billionaire with a platform and an army of fans who will defend anything you do. You're not a victim. My mother died, Piers. Kanye's voice dropped to almost a whisper. My mother died on an operating table. During a surgery I paid for. You know what that does to a person? You know what it feels like to carry that guilt every single day. The studio shifted into a different kind of silence. Not confrontations, something heavier. Vulnerability. I loved my mother more than anything in this world, he continued. She was my rock. The one person who could tell me I was wrong and I would actually listen. And when she died, I lost that. I lost my compass. I lost the voice that kept me grounded. Piers' expression softened, just slightly. I'm sorry for your loss, genuinely. But grief doesn't excuse anti-Semitism. It doesn't excuse praising Hitler. I'm not using it as an excuse, Kanye said. I'm using it as an explanation. There's always an explanation, Piers pressed. The bipolar disorder, the grief, the medication, the industry. At what point is it just you making choices and being responsible for them? Kanye sat back down, energy still coiled tight. You want me to say I'm a bad person? Fine. I've done bad things. I've said bad things. I've hurt people who didn't deserve it. Is that what you need to hear? I need to hear that you understand why it was wrong. Not that you regret the consequences, but that you understand the moral weight of praising a genocidal dictator. A long pause. I understand it, Kanye said finally, his voice heavy. I understand that my words gave comfort to people who hate. I understand that somewhere, some kid already going down a dark path, heard me on, felt validated. I understand. I can't take that back. I can only try to do better. Are you doing better? I'm trying. Every day. Some days are harder than others. Piers opened a folder. In January, you apologized in a letter to the Wall Street Journal. You blamed bipolar disorder and a past head injury. Do you stand by that apology? I stand by the apology, Kanye said. I'm less sure about the explanation. You called it a stretch. Because it felt like one, he admitted. Mental health isn't convenient. It's messy, complicated. It can push you into places the healthy version of you would never go. But your right eye can't hide behind it forever. At some point, I have to own what I did, no matter why I did it. Piers closed the folder. Let me ask you something different. Forget the controversies for a moment. Forget all of it. What do you want your legacy to be? Kanye didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, the bravado was gone. I want them to know I changed music. That I changed fashion. That I took risks other people were afraid to take. I want them to know I came from Chicago with nothing and built something that mattered. He paused, emotion rising. And I want them to know I made mistakes. Big ones. Ones I'm not proud of. But that I kept trying to be better. That I didn't give up on myself, even when the world gave up on me. Do you think the world has given up on you? Parts of it have. Maybe they're right too. But there are still people who believe in me, who remember what I'm capable of when I'm at my best. A breath, and I owe it to them, to my kids, to myself, to try to be that version again. Piers leaned back, studying him. That's the most honest thing you've said in any of our interviews. It's easier to be honest when you're not being attacked from the first second. I pushed you because no one else will, Piers replied. Everyone around you either worships you or fears you. Nobody tells you no. Nobody challenges you. And that's how you ended up losing yourself. Kanye nodded slowly. You might be right about that. I know I am. You're surrounded by yes-men who see you as a meal ticket. They're not going to stop you from self-destructing because your self-destruction is content to them. Kanye looked up, and what are you? Piers didn't hesitate. I'm content too. The difference is I'm not pretending to be your friend. I'm telling you to your face that you've lost the plot. A long silence. Then Kanye stood again. This time, slower, more deliberate. He didn't pace. He just stood there still. You know what the hardest part is? He said quietly. Piers didn't answer. Not the headlines, not the backlash, not even the hate. Kanye looked straight at him. It's realizing that somewhere along the way, you stopped recognizing yourself. The room didn't move. And trying to find your way back, he added, almost to himself, when you don't even know where you got lost. Piers watched him carefully. For what it's worth, he said, this is the first time it sounds like you're actually trying. Kanye gave a faint, tired nod. Maybe that's where it starts. The cameras kept rolling, but for the first time since the interview, neither of them had anything left to say. You know what I realized, Piers? Kanye's voice steadied, almost reflective. We're more alike than either of us wants to admit. We're both addicted to controversy. We're both willing to burn bridges to make a point. We're both convinced we're right and everyone else just doesn't understand. Piers didn't flinch. The difference is I haven't praised Adolf Hitler. There it was again, sharp, unavoidable. You can't go 5 minutes without coming back to that. Kanye shot back. Because it matters, Piers replied. Because it's not something you can apologize away. Because there are people who died in concentration camps whose memory you insulted. Kanye's jaw tightened, and I have to carry that forever. I have to be defined by my worst moment, forever. There's no redemption, no possibility I can change. Redemption requires more than words, Piers said. It requires action, consistency. You don't earn it by apologizing. You earn it by becoming better. I'm trying. Try harder. The temperature in the room spiked. Kanye began pacing again, his hands cutting through the air. You know what your problem is, Piers. You think you're the moral authority. You think because you've got a platform and a British accent, you get to decide who's good and who's bad. But you're not God. And you're not beyond criticism. Piers fired back. You're a rapper who made great music and then decided that gave you a pass to say terrible things. So that's it, Kanye snapped. I'm just a terrible person. No nuance, no complexity. Your actions have been terrible, Piers said evenly. That doesn't make you irredeemable. But redemption isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. Silence. Then Kanye turned past Piers, past the light straight into the camera. I want to say something to the people watching this. His voice cracked, just slightly. I know I've disappointed you. I know. I've said things that made you question whether you can still support me. And I understand if you can't. I understand if what I said is too much to forgive. A breath. But I'm still here, still trying, still making music, still believing I can be better than my worst moments. Another pause. And if you're willing to give me another chance, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it. He turned back to Piers. Something had shifted. Not anger. Not defiance. Something quieter. We're done here. We're not done, Piers said. I have more questions. Done because I've said what I needed to say. Staying longer just gives you more chances to twist my words. I don't need to twist anything, Piers replied coldly. Do that yourself? The words landed hard. Kanye flinch, but didn't explode. Instead, he shook his head slowly. You know what the real tragedy is? Piers said nothing. We could have had a real conversation, actually connected, but you're too invested in being the tough guy, and I'm too defensive to let you in. A pause. So we just keep having the same fight. He reached up, unclipped his microphone, and set it carefully on the table. I hope you get what you need out of this, Piers. The views, the clicks, the controversy. He turned toward the exit. But I'm not going to be your content anymore. Piers called after him. That's the third time you've walked out on me. What does that say about you? Kanye stopped at the door. He turned back one last time. It says, I know when. I'm talking to someone who's already made up their mind. A beat. It says I'm learning to protect my peace even if it looks like running away. Another beat. And it says, maybe I'm finally learning when to shut up. And with that, Kanye West walked off the set of Piers Morgan. Uncensored for the third time, the studio felt emptier. Piers sat in silence for a moment, then turned back to the camera. Well, he said, measured, there you have it. West, still controversial, still complicated, still walking out before the conversation ends. A slight pause. But there was something different this time. Something unspoken lingered. The interview would be dissected for weeks. Some would say Piers Morgan went too far, too aggressive, too relentless. Others would say he didn't go far enough, and Kanye. He would do what he always does, create, provoke, contradict, remain impossible to ignore. Impossible to fully condemn. Impossible to fully embrace. That was the paradox of Kanye West, a man whose genius and self-destruction seemed inseparable. A man who could move millions with a song and unsettle them with a sentence. A man who, for better or worse, refused to be anything other than exactly who he was. And maybe that was both his greatest strength and his greatest flaw.